Hey guys, welcome. I'm going to kind of go walk you through setting up an S3 bucket with CloudFront for your Statamic projects. This is kind of something that I've kind of went through and kind of figured out on my own and figured out what works for my projects. And now it's something that I kind of created a guide for every project that I go through. There's just a little bit of differences on what I see on what's documented, but I'll walk y'all through it, and then we'll learn this together. So let's get started. One of the first things that I did was I created a user group, and in this user group, I'm going to show you right here what the permissions are set for this. So in this user group, these permissions right here, let's go to edit these permissions on this policy here. So we can see here, I went through the policy, and this is the policy. I'm going to drop the JSON for you so y'all don't have to go through this again. Now I actually went through and went through and edited what I needed from S3, but I got list permissions, read permissions, and write permissions. So it's pretty much everything. But I didn't do the asterisk, which allows everything. I actually spelled out just what I needed. The way I came about this list is I added a few, did some tests, would run into an error, then I would come back and add that permission here. So I should have only what you need, and I'll drop this in the description so that way you can just kind of copy and paste into a policy. So the way in AWS, you're going to create a policy. So obviously you just here in the search, this is where I type in everything. So to get to your policies, and then that policy is going to be tied to a web group. So here in my groups, user groups, I created a group that's going to just be my asset group. So in that permission, this policy is applied to that. So that's going to come later in the video, but you got to make sure that that's kind of set up already. So that way you can kind of follow along. So feel free to pause the video, set that up, and follow along. But first we're going to start off. I'm just going to type in S3 in the search. Go here. I'm going to create a bucket. And in this bucket, I'm going to just give it a name. And normally the way I name them is just kind of like Echo, because that's the name of my business. And then whatever the client name is. So we're going to call this one AWS Setup, pretending that's the client. Then we're going to go, this one's to copy the settings. I don't need to copy the settings. So I'm just going to kind of go down here. I usually leave everything locked down, so I don't do anything here. Because what's going to happen is we're going to be able to upload to this bucket. But when we display the images that are coming through from AWS, we're going to do it, we're going to expose it on CloudFront. So here I'm just going to go ahead and click Create Bucket. And then there's that bucket there, AWS setup. So then now I'm going to go, and normally I create a user for every bucket, so that way I don't have one user for all buckets. So I'll go here and I'll go and create a user. So then I'm going to call this a Echo, and I have kind of like a naming scheme. I'm just going to call this AWS setup user. Okay. I don't need this console access, so I'm going to hit next. And then this is where that policy that I told you we needed, I already have the policy attached to it. I'm going to go ahead and attach this user to the policy of Echo Web Asset Group, which has that policy JSON stuff that I showed you at the beginning of the video. So I'm going to go ahead and hit next, and then we're going to go ahead and create user. So AWS setup user here. Okay. Now that I have that, let's go here to CloudFront. It seems like they change their setup every now and then, so I have some notes that I've created from this, but it tends to change. So here we're going to go ahead and set this up. I'm going to select that bucket that's there, that origin domain, this new bucket that I created right here. So that's selected. Origin access, control setting. I usually click origin access control setting recommended, and then I create a new OC, usually I do this just by itself. Origin type S3. We'll hit control there. Okay, CloudFront will provide you with policy statement after creating the distribution. So this policy statement is something that we're going to add to our bucket. And we're going to go ahead and create this distribution here. Create distribution. Security options. We're going to go ahead and enable security options. Create distribution. Okay, so this right here is it's saying that we need to update our policy for our S3 bucket. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that for our bucket. And then let's see, go to, and it takes me straight there. There's the echo to AWS, takes me straight to the permissions, and makes it kind of easy for me to just paste in here. Oh, duh, I got to hit edit. So there, and then save changes. Okay, so now that should be set up. Let's go ahead and go to our CloudFront. We're going to copy some information there that we're going to do over to our area here, and this is just the domain name that it created right here. That's what I'm copying over. So for now, I'm going to open up this env, and I'm going to just drop it down here, and I'll show you guys where that's going to go. Next thing, now we're going to kind of mess with the setting it up in the actual project. So one thing we're going to do right here is composer require the league file AWS. So if you go over to Statamic, you'll see here that in their settings, this is one of the things that we'll need to do if we're going to do S3 setup. That we'll need this library for it, Laravel file system, and you know there's some other documentation here on what we would need if you're going to use S3. Let's see, is that it? It's somewhere here. There we go, right here. So the S3 driver configuration. So you could copy it here from the Laravel area, but I'll drop it in the description too as well. So I'm going to do this for this newly installed project. Let that install. Okay, that's good. Then I have this kind of example env setup that I'm going to copy over here that we're going to do for the file setup here. So I'm going to drop this right about where we have the log for this. Let me see, file system. So there's file system right there. So I'm going to put it kind of below here. I'm going to take this one out because we already have that one there. Make sure I don't have any duplicates here. Oh, it's all down here. So let me pull this up and make sure that's not new ones. So normally I do this so that way I check to see if there was new ones introduced. So it all looks good there. I'm going to copy this URL. This is a new one that I don't that normally is not in there, but I put it in there because then that's what's going to serve up the images. Okay, and then there's some information that I got to copy over from AWS. So let's look through here. File system, I saw it there. Okay, so we're going to change that to S3. So we're changing that from S3 to local. Okay. All right, now let me go to AWS and I'm going to get some of this information from the actual bucket here. So first off, I'm going to go ahead and copy this right here. That's going to be my actual bucket name. There, and get rid of that space. Default region. So the fact that this is showing up under this pull down right here, so it's US East 1. So that should do it there. And then now I got to get the keys. And so these keys are going to come from my user. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to IM. And I go back to, not my user groups, I clicked the wrong one, users, AWS setup, security credentials, and then create access keys. Now on this create access keys, I usually do application running outside of AWS. Then I hit next. Here I normally don't put a value in there, so then I'll hit create access keys. So this is going to be the access key that I'm going to drop in here. And then this is going to be the secret that I'm going to drop in here for the secret. Okay, so make sure that's good. Get rid of that extra space. And then get rid of that. Okay, so hopefully that should be good enough to test. Okay, and then one other area we're going to go through just to kind of see is we're going to go over to config file systems here. And then we're going to make sure, okay, so S3 is there. So one of the things that I have issues with, and sometimes it's a permission issue, and it might be something that I don't have set up correctly with AWS, but I mean, it works for me, is that I have to always set this one up to private. Even though it says public in the documentation, when I hit private, everything jives together well. I think it's locked down a little bit more too. So that's just something that I have to do on all my configs, but it's something that, you know, it took a lot of hours, a lot of heartache, and a lot of messing around with. So now I'm actually going to go to the application. So I have an application that I have installed here, and we're going to see if this works. We're going to go over to the container, and we're going to go to assets. I'm going to go to edit container. And then right here on this file driver, I'm going to select S3 now. Okay. Then I'm going to hit save. So hit save. I'm going to go back because it had that little pop-up, so I just want to make sure that it's stuck. Okay. So we're going back here. Now I'm going to test an upload and see if this works. Hopefully we don't get an error. Puppies are fun. So let's see what happens. And hopefully we set everything up correctly. It looks like we did. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this so that way y'all can actually see the URL. So here's the actual image. When I click on this URL, there's that URL right here for this CloudFront. So now all images that I'll upload are actually going to show up in the buckets, in the bucket that I created, but they're not being served up by the bucket, they're being served up by CloudFront. So here's the actual image that just got uploaded. And then it's being served up through this URL, so I'm actually taking advantage of having a CDN, you know, with all images that I have inside of Statamic. So this is usually the way that I've documented, and I'm looking at my documentation at the same time that I'm looking at AWS, and it continues to change as far as the UI, but it's all basically the same. You know, they just kind of move stuff around. But I generally use this for all my client projects. You know, I have, you saw the buckets I have there, and the cost for it is very minimal depending, you know, on what's being used, you know, when these images are served up and things like that. But anyway, hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments. If you'd like to see other videos, be sure to let me know what other videos you're looking to do as far as Statamic or Laravel goes. And then just keep in touch and reach out to me anytime. Thank you.